Before we begin, if you like learning about why you think, feel, and behave the way you do, consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow and it tells me you want more videos like this. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. I'm just glad you're here. Now, let me ask you something. Did you grow up in a home where you always had to walk on eggshells? Where every word you said had to be measured carefully because one small mistake could change the entire atmosphere? Where emotions like anger, sadness, or frustration weren't really yours to show and you learned early on to hide how you felt? If that sounds familiar, then you're not alone, and chances are you're still carrying patterns from that childhood that shape how you think, feel, and act today, even if you don't notice it. Those behaviors you see in yourself now, maybe overthinking, being overly cautious, doubting yourself, or struggling to speak up, aren't random bad habits. They are survival skills your mind developed when you were too young to understand the world around you. Your brain was doing exactly what it needed to keep you safe, to navigate a home where rules were strict and emotions were tightly controlled. Think about it. Do you sometimes replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said the right thing? Do you feel tense when someone criticizes you, even if it's not harsh? Do you avoid speaking up? Not because you lack confidence, but because your brain learned to anticipate consequences. These are not flaws, they are echoes of a strict childhood. Your younger self learned in order to anticipate every possible consequence, to avoid mistakes at all costs, to hide your feelings so you wouldn't be reprimanded or feel shame. And as an adult, your brain hasn't completely unlearned those survival mechanisms. They still influence the way you interact with the world. And the more we understand these patterns, the more we can start to untangle them. So the child inside you who once needed these survival skills can finally rest. By exploring how a strict childhood shapes your mind, how it influences your emotions, your behaviors, and your relationships, we can begin to gently rewire those patterns. You'll start to see that what once kept you safe can now be transformed into self-awareness and emotional freedom. Because the truth is, your past didn't break you, it prepared you to survive. And with understanding, patience, and small conscious changes, you can learn to thrive rather than just survive, carrying those old survival skills as wisdom rather than chains. In strict households, there are rules and then there are unspoken rules. Rules like don't talk back, don't question adults, don't ask for too much, don't show anger, don't disappoint anyone. You might not remember exactly how young you were, but over time, you absorb these lessons. Slowly, almost without realizing it, you learn that love in that house wasn't unconditional. It was earned through obedience, careful behavior, and constant vigilance. A raised eyebrow, a sharp sigh, a long, heavy silence. These were signals your mind learned to notice immediately. You didn't just hear the rules, you felt them. Your body learned the tension, your heart learned the fear, and your mind learned to anticipate what would be safe and what would cause conflict. You grew up with one very clear message: I must be perfect to be safe. And so, perfection became your shield. You learned to measure every word, to hide every feeling that might upset anyone, and to suppress anything that might be seen as wrong. Over time, this vigilance became automatic. Your brain became a master at scanning the environment, detecting even the smallest sign of disapproval or disappointment. And it wasn't just about rules, it was about the emotional cost of breaking them. Every mistake, every misstep came with subtle warnings. And even though love was there, it always came with conditions. This taught your young mind to be careful, cautious, and often quiet. To avoid conflict at all costs. To survive, you became hyper aware, always observing, always adjusting, always measuring yourself against impossible standards. Even now, as an adult, your mind still remembers. You may notice it in how critical you are of yourself, how anxious you feel when someone disagreed with you, or how you avoid confrontation even when it's necessary. Those old survival skills are still there. They protected you as a child, and understanding that is the first step toward realizing that your worth is not tied to perfection, and your safety doesn't depend on walking on eggshells anymore. When children grow up around unpredictable reactions, their brain goes into what's called hyper-awareness. Not the medical kind, but a natural, instinctive survival mechanism. It's your mind's way of keeping you safe in an environment where you could never be sure what would set someone off. It means you learn to scan the environment constantly. Every sound, every movement, every tone of voice became a signal. Footsteps in the hallway, the snap of a door, a shift in someone's expression. All of these were clues that something could go wrong. You weren't just observing, you were anticipating, calculating, preparing for what might come next. Your body lived in a constant state of quiet tension, even if you didn't consciously feel it. Your muscles were always ready, your heart slightly quicker, your senses tuned to subtle changes, and when you couldn't predict what would spark anger or disappointment, your brain did something incredibly smart, but also deeply exhausting. It taught you to shrink. You learned to make yourself smaller, quieter, less noticeable. You lowered your voice, controlled your facial expressions, avoided giving your opinions, hid your emotions, and became easy to handle. You weren't doing this because you wanted to or because it was your personality. You were doing it because your nervous system was protecting you. It was survival, pure and simple. And this hyper awareness didn't just teach behaviors, it shaped your entire emotional blueprint. It affected how you connect with people, how you express yourself, and even how you experience joy or sadness. You carry the echoes of that tension into adulthood, the instinct to anticipate conflict, to avoid upsetting anyone, to always be careful with your words and actions. Even now, in situations that should feel safe, you might notice yourself holding back, overthinking, or shrinking in subtle ways. That's not weakness. That's your survival skills lingering from childhood. And the remarkable thing is, once you understand this, you can begin to retrain your mind. You can learn to expand again, to speak, feel, and act without the constant shadow of hyper-awareness, and slowly, gently reclaim the space your younger self needed but never had. This is the part adults rarely understand about themselves. You overthink every small thing. You replay conversations in your mind, analyzing every word, every tone, every pause, because in childhood, words weren't harmless. They had consequences. You learned early that one wrong thing could trigger tension, anger, or disappointment. And even now, your brain hasn't forgotten. It still examines interactions, sometimes unnecessarily, trying to protect you. You apologize too quickly even when you haven't done anything wrong. It's not because you lack confidence, it's because your brain learned that conflict equals danger. Even a small disagreement feels risky, and saying "I'm sorry" becomes an automatic way to calm the situation. You freeze when someone raises their voice, even as an adult. Your body remembers the feeling of tension, the tightness in your chest, the sudden rush of fear, even if your conscious mind doesn't recall the original moments that taught you to be careful. That instinct is still alive. You struggle to trust your own decisions. Independence wasn't encouraged in a strict household. Instead, you were taught to seek approval, to wait for guidance, to second guess yourself. And now, making choices can feel overwhelming because your brain is still wired to prioritize safety over self-trust. Expressing your needs feels uncomfortable. Asking for what you want or need as an adult might make you feel selfish, difficult, or burdensome, feelings that were reinforced when you were younger. So you learn to survive without asking, to quietly compromise your own needs in order to maintain peace. You avoid conflict at any cost, even if it means hurting yourself. Being honest or standing up for yourself might feel dangerous, so it seems safer to stay quiet, to smile, to comply, even if it leaves you frustrated, resentful, or unfulfilled. Peace feels like security, even when it costs you internally. You feel guilty when you rest, when you take time for yourself, when you do nothing, because your worth was tied to performance, achievement, and obedience. Relaxation feels like indulgence or laziness. Your brain still evaluates whether you are being productive enough, carrying the old rules forward. Perfectionism is another echo of that strict upbringing. Not because you love perfection or because it's part of your personality, but because mistakes were punished rather than corrected. You learn that slipping up could lead to disapproval, shame, or even rejection, so striving to be flawless became a shield, a defense mechanism. Every one of these behaviors has a root. They are not random quirks, flaws, or weaknesses. You didn't become this by accident. Each pattern, each instinct, each little habit traces back to a time when your brain was simply trying to keep you safe, to survive in an environment that demanded caution, obedience, and emotional restraint. Understanding that is the first step toward healing, because when you see these behaviors for what they truly are, you can begin to gently retrain your mind and reclaim the freedom your younger self never had. There are deeper things too, the things you never say out loud. Like how you still check your tone before sending a text, almost as if every word could be misinterpreted. How you rehearse conversations in your head over and over, trying to predict how someone might react. How you feel that flutter of anxiety when you sense someone is disappointed in you, even if it's minor. How compliments feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, but criticism hits you like a confirmation of what you've always feared, or how your body tightens when someone says, "We need to talk." Four simple words, but growing up, they rarely meant anything good. They usually signaled that you'd done something wrong, that tension was coming, that judgment was near. Your nervous system learned to anticipate the weight long before your conscious mind understood why. Strict childhoods also plant another seed, self-doubt. You doubt your worth, you doubt your choices, you doubt your boundaries, you doubt your own intuition. Not because you inherently lack confidence, but because you were rarely, if ever, allowed to trust yourself. You were trained to rely on others' approval instead, and maybe you don't even realize how deeply that shaped your inner world. Sometimes when someone hurts you, you don't even get angry at them. Instead, you feel anger at yourself for allowing it, for not speaking up, for not anticipating their reaction. That isn't weakness. That's conditioning. That's what happens when your mind grows up learning that survival means taking the blame, keeping the peace, and hiding your feelings to avoid conflict. You carried that conditioning for years, maybe even decades, and it shows up in ways you barely notice. In the quiet moments when you second guess your decisions, in relationships when you hesitate to voice what you want, in work or social situations when fear of judgment keeps you from acting freely. Your brain, trained to protect you in childhood, is still protecting you now. Only sometimes it's protecting the part of you that no longer needs protection. And understanding this is the first step toward reclaiming yourself. Because when you see these patterns for what they are, not as flaws, but as survival mechanisms, you can begin to gently let them go. You can start to trust yourself, to honor your feelings, and to stop carrying the weight of a childhood that demanded perfection, silence, and compliance. Slowly, carefully, you can learn to expand into the space that was always meant for you, free from fear, doubt, and the shadows of old rules. If no one has ever said this to you before, I want to say it now. Nothing about you is wrong. Not your habits, not your thoughts, not the ways you cope. You didn't choose these patterns. You grew up adapting to survive. Everything you learned, everything you mastered, was your mind's way of keeping you safe in a world that often felt unpredictable, strict, or unkind. You learned to stay quiet because noise wasn't safe. You learned perfection because mistakes had consequences. You learned to hide emotions because vulnerability could be met with disapproval or punishment. You learned to work hard because your worth had to be earned, not freely given. You learned to take care of others because, in many ways, no one took care of you emotionally. But here's the truth: you are not that child anymore. You don't have to live scared, small, or silent. The rules that once governed your life no longer have to control you. You can speak, you can rest, you can express yourself without fear. You can set boundaries without guilt. You can trust yourself. You deserve safety, a sense of calm that feels steady and real. You deserve gentleness, moments where you are allowed to just be without judgment or pressure. You deserve love without conditions, from yourself and from others. You deserve to understand your own heart, your own mind, and your own story without shame or fear. And if this video made you feel understood, if it gave you even a little bit of relief or clarity, know that you are not alone. You can subscribe for more content like this, but only if it feels right for you. There's no obligation, no pressure. This is about your journey, your pace, your growth. So take a deep breath. Inhale slowly and exhale. Let yourself feel the weight of what you've carried and know that every step you've taken has brought you here. You are stronger than you realize. You are doing better than you think. You are enough, exactly as you are. And with each gentle step forward, you are learning to live a life that the child inside you always deserved, safe, seen, and loved.